Hey everyone, this is Rick Gualtieri, and welcome back to another Tales of a Midlist Author. I'll apologize in advance if it's a little noisy in the background. This mic sometimes picks up stuff, and I'm not home alone. It's one of those noisy nights, and you can tell it's night because of like the washed out, undead look. Because I'm like trying to record this with like the lights on and on a mostly black screen, but of course not enough to do that. And one of these days I'll figure out the whole lighting concept. But anyway, that's beside the point. What is the point is this is a topic that I've been wanting to do for a while, but even today I got a good reminder why it's important, simply because one of my writer friends was was in a panic because they lost several thousand words worth of work. And so what I wanted to talk about today was not only the concept of saving early and often, which hopefully you should know by now, but also the concept of keeping multiple redundant backup copies. And excuse me for a second, I'm going to pull out one just so I don't have to grab it later. So first off, saving early and often. Whether you're working in Word, whether you're working in Scrivener, some software allows for autosave, which is always a good thing to keep on. But if you don't like having that on, and sometimes I'll turn it off just because I know Word tries to like autosave to the cloud. I don't like Word's cloud solution, just personally. But train yourself to hit that save button. It's great that you're in the middle of writing, that you're in the zone, and you've just cranked out 3,000 words. You're like, yeah, I just finished a day, huge amount of writing. Okay, let me shut down. Oh crap, I didn't save. Train yourself to hit that save button, whether it's every chapter, whenever you take a break, or best yet, every half hour. Therefore, at the worst, if anything happens, you're like, oh, well, I lost a half an hour's worth of work, maybe 500 words. It sucks, but it's not the end of the day. It's a lot better than 6,000 or 10,000 or however many you lost. So that's probably the first thing. Save early and often. Train yourself to do it. Next up, and this is probably the biggest bane of writers, is that when something gets corrupted and you don't have redundant backups. I've seen writers lose entire manuscripts this way, which is really heartbreaking to see. I've seen people lose a week's worth of work, multiple weeks, sometimes even a day's worth of work. I mean, that could be like 6,000 words on a good day. And do you really want to go back and just lose essentially 8 or 9 hours worth of work? I know I don't. So that being said, I make it a point whenever I have a work in progress or a finished work even, I keep at least 3 copies at any given time. And I keep a copy locally, that's on my computer or my laptop, the hard drive. I keep a copy in external storage. That's one of these guys. That's a USB key fob, and they pretty much work in any modern computer, and they're cheap. You can get 32 gigs for under $10 on Amazon. So maybe pick up a couple of those. And I always keep at least one copy in the cloud. I personally use Dropbox, but there's other solutions. There's Google Drive, there's OneDrive, there's iCloud, wherever you like using. And the reason for that is because those multiple copies is if there is a catastrophic failure on one of them, it doesn't affect the rest. Power goes out while I'm while I'm working on my main PC and I lose everything. Oh well, I have a key fob backup. Key fob gets corrupted, I have the PC. Nuclear war hits and there's an EMP blast and it blows out every bit of electronics in my house. Hey, I have a copy on Dropbox because, if there's a nuclear war, the first thing I'm going to think about is, oh my God, did I save those last 2,000 words? But regardless, it's kind of it's a little bit of paranoia, but it's disaster proofing. And as I said, minimum 3, but sometimes I have as many as 7, because sometimes I work on my laptop and transfer things. Sometimes I work on an iPad, and I make it a point that even though I might be transferring copies via Dropbox or that key fob, I always have a local copy there too. So, at any given time, I think the worst I have ever lost is maybe a couple hours worth of work, and usually that's been because of a corrupted file. Now, that said, corruption can be a problem. One thing I try to make it a point to do is I don't like working on either cloud or USB key fob copies. I make it a point that when I'm doing my work, I'm working on a local copy. And the reason for that is that I found that maybe the internet glitches, maybe there's like, maybe I unplugged the key fob too soon, but every time I've had an issue with a file, it has been because I've worked on a non-local copy. So instead what I do is, if I'm working on my laptop downstairs or I'm working on my PC upstairs, I open up the local copy, I do my work, I save it, then I copy it over to the USB fob, then I copy it over to Dropbox and move from there. So therefore, I'm working on, in theory, the most stable copy. I mean, obviously hard drives fail and stuff, nothing is foolproof, but especially these days with laptops and SSDs, those are actually much harder to kill. So I'm usually pretty comfortable with that. And key fobs are pretty hard to kill as well. But as I said, what if it's like a slow save and you pull it out too soon and you screw it up? I'd rather work on that stable local copy, which that's my personal preference. Now that said, as another paranoia check, what I like to do is, when I finish the day's work, I save the local copy, then I copy it to my key fob. Before I copy it anywhere else, say to Dropbox, and make sure, I open it again and double check to make sure it's okay. That's also screwed me in the past, where I'm just like, oh, let me just copy, and then I open it up, I'm like, oh no, I just copied a corrupted file. So make sure, as a sanity check, that you copy it, then you open the copy, make sure it's okay, and then you finish copying everywhere. Therefore, you ensure that those 3 copies you're keeping aren't 3 corrupted copies, if that makes sense. As I said, it adds a few minutes to your day, not much, maybe it's an extra minute to my day, if anything. And it might seem like a pain in the ass, but let me tell you, if something goes wrong, I am damn glad for that pain in the ass. One final thing to talk about is version control. And this is where another thing can happen where, hey, I have like multiple different copies, I'm working, everything's great, and then I stupidly grab an earlier copy and I write over all the work I've done and it's all screwed up. And more than once I've seen this happen with people doing a pre-order where they'll be like, oh, hey, I have the final file, but I uploaded an earlier version. There's a lot of different ways to do version control. You can have dedicated software to do version control, and I think some of the cloud solutions, I think Dropbox might do version control too. You can have dedicated software to do that, and that's like, sometimes cool to do. You can do naming conventions. I know every draft I do, I give it a different name, even if it's to say, okay, Build a Vampire 1, Build a Vampire 2. Those are all in the same folder, so I'm not going to confuse it with like Scary Dead Things and the others in the series, because I'm going to name those differently. But that kind of like helps. And then when I get further on, and this comes back from my software coding days, I'll something that comes back is like, from editing will be kind of like, the bronze copy, then it's like proof, that's the silver copy, and finally there's the gold copy, and that's the copy that is going to launch. So I have a naming convention, therefore I know which one is like, is the most recent. And worst case scenario is check your date stamps. If you know you have multiple copies, look and make sure that they all have the same date stamps, and if they don't, open the most recent one. Because chances are, every once in a while you're going to have the most recent one maybe not be the best copy. It's pretty rare, I find, but make sure you're opening and working on the most recent one. That's version control. Like I said, you can use dedicated software, or you can do naming conventions, or you can just do it manually, checking the date stamp. But these are paranoia measures which will not eliminate the possibility of anything bad happening, because, hey, you might be like, hey, I got it all set up, it's great, and then you get hit by lightning, and, well, you die, in which case nobody cares. But, or I'm saying, sometimes even the best backups fail. But this minimizes the chances of it happening. And again, sometimes it's paranoid. But hey, I'd rather have the paranoia than lose a week's worth of work. And hell, even losing a day's worth of work, I don't want to have that happen. So save early often, keep redundant copies, get yourself a USB key fob, don't cheap out, get yourself some cloud storage. Most of it's free. And I will say, you can save Dropbox's 1 gig free solution. You can't save a lot of images there, but you can save a ton of Word files there. Believe you me. And do some version control. Train yourself to do these, and you will probably go probably quite some time without having a disaster. And or at least that's my hope. All right, we'll keep this one short. My name is Rick Gualtieri. This is Tales of Midlist Author. Save early and often, and I will talk to you again real soon.